So the third and final installment to the Utawarerumono Trilogy is out today, and I picked it up. But before I play it, I just wanted to recollect my thoughts about this series, and I figured I might as well make a video about it, just in case anyone finds my thoughts worth a listen. The first game to me was a rather phenomenal one. It had a well-structured and told story that I personally rather loved. And the gameplay mechanics, while compared to the modern day feel quite old, I quite appreciated it for its simplicity. At the time, it was quite phenomenal, though. It was a game from 2002. It's a strategy turn-based RPG, kind of like, I don't know, Fire Emblem or Suikoden Tactics, where you move your character around a grid-based map, and you can attack the enemies when you're adjacent to them, or if it's your healer, heal your unit that is adjacent to your healer. And that's pretty much it, actually. Attack and heal. Well, when you attack or heal, if you time your button presses properly, you can chain attacks or chain heals in a single turn. And if you manage to chain the maximum of 4 times, you do an ultimate attack or an ultimate heal. But that was about it as far as complex gameplay goes. Other than a character select screen before battle, if you want to count that. And I guess I should also mention there's a certain character who gets a lot weaker when the map contains water or if it's raining. So that's pretty cool. When you finish a battle, your characters earn points individually that you can spread amongst different stats, like, attack, defense, the usual. And most importantly, the maximum amount of chain hits you can perform. This is important, and it costs a lot more than the others. As far as the visual novel bits go, it's rather simple. You just read and you click. Sometimes choices will come up where you decide where to go, such as to the garden, to your room, and stuff like that. But it really doesn't matter, because even if you can't finish visiting all of them the first time, they still remain there the next time the choice comes up. So no matter what, you pretty much get to see all of them anyway. So it's a great game. And even though it's somewhat old, 2002, I would still recommend playing it if you haven't. The PC version has an English patch, so if you don't understand Japanese, hey, at least you can play it in English. So yeah, I recommend playing the first game. And watching the anime, I guess, if if you're into that too. Though, actually, I don't like the anime as much as the game. It misses just so many details and small, like, character building moments. But it's better than nothing. So if you can't play the game, or you can't, I don't know, watch it on YouTube or something, at least watch the anime. It covers the essential points of this really great story. And while I still feel you're missing out, it's better than not having anything to do with the series, I suppose. In the best case scenario, I recommend both playing the game and watching the anime. That's what I did anyway. So, the sequel to this really great game was teased for quite a few years before it actually came out, like a year ago. So, at the time, when they announced that they were working on it, I think 2 years ago or something like that, when they first announced, I was really, really happy. I was so curious to the aftermath after the conclusion of the first game. There's basically some questions I want to answer, right? But unfortunately, the sequel didn't provide me with that. You see, the sequel is more of a somewhat different, in a sense, well, basically a different story, right? With different characters, but it's set in the same universe. And after the story progresses for a while, you see hints about what happened after the events of the first game, including returning characters who, well, certainly grew up, and some of the guys just became quite old. Still enough to fight, but older. They look older. One even has a freaking mustache, man. So anyway, the questions I had weren't answered, but hopefully the third game will provide me with that. While I was a bit disappointed at the lack of details, more details as to the aftermath of the first game. I enjoyed the game for what it was. It added a few improvements. I mean, it's 2015 when it came out. So compared to the 2002 version, of course it has to have improved, right? Well, it was mostly taken from another game made by the same company, Tears of Tiara, the PS3 version to be exact, and just modified them a bit. On the visual novel aspects, it's exactly the same. You read, you click, and the choices don't mean much because you get to see them all anyway. On the gameplay front, it incorporated pretty much the entire system from Tears of Tiara with a bit of modifications, like I just said a while ago. It's still a turn-based RPG on a grid-based map. However, on the character select screen before a battle, you can actually set certain skills on characters via items you receive in battle, such as increased movement, higher attack, higher defense, stuff like that. The elemental wheel from Tears of Tiara makes an appearance as well, with each character assigned a certain element, and when the wheel hits that certain element, it has an advantage in terms of overall stats for that one turn. Also, elemental weaknesses come into play where certain elements are stronger than others, such as, fire is strong against wind and stuff like that. So, you really should position your units based on elements a bit carefully, since you deal more damage and take less damage against elements you're strong against, but you take more damage and deal less damage against elements you're weak against. Shit, I'm using the same word a lot. During battle, you once again position yourself near an enemy and attack them. This time, however, characters are not limited to a single type of attack, and usually have multiple types of attacks. A certain character, for example, has a close range attack when you're adjacent to the enemy, and one for long range if you're 2 to 3 spaces away from the enemy. So with these new options, there's certainly more strategy you can use. The ultimate attacks, if you chain a maximum of 4 or a number of other times depending on the character, makes a return. And instead of just time button presses, which are still there is a new type where you must hold onto the button and release it at the correct timing to chain magic. Oh, and the system where you can undo your previous move up to a certain number of turns comes from Tears of Tiara as well, which I'm really happy for, because in the bonus dungeon at the end of the game, I really needed that for the last one. Another big difference from Tears of Tiara, though, is how they handle damage modifiers for direction, as well as their zone of control system. In Tears of Tiara, you were always encouraged to attack enemies from behind or the side to maximize damage and critical chance, as well as avoid letting enemies do the same to you. The zone of control are on both sides of the enemy, or larger if it's a bigger enemy. Ensure that you can't just run up behind the enemy in one turn, preventing you from exploiting the system, since the zone of control forces you to stand beside him. And then you can move behind him the next turn if he, for some reason, doesn't do anything. However, for example, one strategy you can use is use 2 characters near each other. One of them can stand on the enemy's zone of control on the side, and your other character can run through your first character behind the enemy and hit him from the back. That's strategically using the system, and that's kind of cool. That, or you just equip one of the late game skills that makes you immune to the zone of control and just run up behind him and hit him. In the Utawarerumono Trilogy, the second game, it's different. The direction modifier doesn't exist, meaning you deal the same damage no matter where you stand around the enemy. Attacking them from the back means nothing, so, you don't have to bother. The new zone of control with this system, basically if you are within range of a certain enemy that has the zone of control, you're stuck on that one spot, meaning you cannot move as long as the enemy with the zone of control doesn't move. And if he moves next to you, which in order to attack you he has to, you're pretty much stuck there forever unless he's defeated, or you have the skill that lets you ignore it. I think that's about it. I'll definitely recommend the second game as well. Unfortunately, doesn't have an English translation, so if you want to experience this great game, you need to be somewhat proficient in Japanese. In the worst case, you can watch the anime. It's better than not playing. I mean, being unable to play the game, you can at least watch the anime. But like I said, with the first game, you're certainly missing out on quite a lot of details and character building stuff if you only watch the anime and not play the game. But again, unlike the first game, it's only in Japanese, the game. So some people have no choice but to watch the anime, and I don't blame them. Well, my thoughts on the previous two games, this wraps it up, I guess. They were both great. I loved them. I loved this series. I also love the Tears of Sierra series, but that's not what I'm talking about this time. And I can't wait to start playing this third game that I just bought like an hour ago. Went all the way to Akiba to get it. But I'm also so busy playing the new Persona 5, I can never find time to play it. And also, I'm just busy overall. So if you actually stayed this far, thanks for listening to what I had to say. I hope it at least you found it interesting or worth listening to. If not, I'm sorry. But you were the one that chose to stay and listen. So thank you.